2019 is practically over, so I think it's a great time to count down the best games of the year, and there's no shortage of them this year. Before we get into it, I just want to say that no remasters, collections, ports are allowed, but remakes, as long as they change up the game enough, are allowed on the list. Also, one game per franchise. Anyways, let's get started, but before we do that, you know what to do. You should like this video, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, and leave a comment, and you'll be a loyal subscriber.
I wanted to give to you, the last part of your notes here, the significance spiritually of the number 10.
This has never happened when making a best of the year list, but Mortal Kombat 11 wouldn't have made the list if it was still at the same state as it was at launch. It wasn't bad at launch, not at all, but it wouldn't have made the list, and the game improved in such a short amount of time. This is Mortal Kombat as you know and love, with the gory fatalities and everything. It's got a nice roster and a story mode that is fucking awesome, though albeit a little short, but it's still awesome. Not to mention the gear, which was a little annoying to obtain at launch due to the crypt, but became easier to obtain and less annoying. And it's a really nice addition to the franchise. Not to mention the inclusions of the Terminator, Spawn, and the Joker. Definitely buy this game if you like fighting games. The Nintendo Switch has games. Many of them were exclusives this year and were really good, and quite a few made the list, starting with Astral Chain. First we got Platinum Games with a Platinum hit. That is because the combat is nice and precise with its unique nature of controlling two characters at once. You control both a cop and a chimera, which is a creature in the game, and there are different kinds of chimera. There's sword, archer, puncher, dog, amongst others. Put that with a great story and you got the 9th best game of 2019.
So I'm going to be giving this flavor 8.5 out of 10 scoops.
Who knew that the best stealth game would be a game where you're a goose ruining people's day? Untitled Goose Game is such a unique game. For one, it doesn't really have a title. For two, you're the asshole in this game as a goose. You have certain objectives to just fuck with people going by their day. Getting a gardener wet, moving someone's chair so they sit on the ground, which is a classic prank, or stealing shit to make a picnic. Untitled Goose Game is the best time waster of the year. Not to mention, when you fuck with people, you really do feel their anger, as they're just trying to do their own thing, and this asshole goose is just ruining it for them. Untitled Goose Game is simply on here for being unique and a game to get some friends of yours, and you can just fuck around in it, and that's not a bad thing.
36.
Very close, but that's not. Let's go to Gary the Retard. What number between 2 and 4?
7.
Back in 2017, when Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out, and, you know, all that stuff happened, if you were to tell me that 2 years later, the same publisher, E-fucking-A, would publish another Star Wars game, and it's got the combat of a Souls game, parkour mechanics like Uncharted or Assassin's Creed, and a linear gameplay style like 2018's God of War, and making it on this list, I would have definitely punched you in the face. But here we are. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is definitely one of the best Star Wars games to date, and takes place in between episodes 3 and 4, making the story canon and actually really important. Not to mention actual likable characters in the form of Cal Kestis, who shows you the difficulties of being a Jedi, especially in this time period, as well as Seer, Grease, and adorable little BD1. This game also makes you, get this, feel like a Jedi. Yeah, I said it. Throw that in with the ending and you got one hell of a Star Wars game.
Okay, Mrs. Puff, what's my final score?
6.
Woo!
It's about time we get a home console version of Fire Emblem, and Fire Emblem Three Houses was that game, and it definitely delivered. Fire Emblem Three Houses is a more unique Fire Emblem game story-wise, as, yeah, there's still the custom character, but this time there's also 3 separate classes of fighters, hence the name Three Houses. and kind of makes it into 3 separate games with the story. Not to mention, the combat is Fire Emblem goodness and reminds me a lot of Fire Emblem Awakening, which was also fantastic. The game's story also depends on the house you pick, which is also a plus, since there's no definitive story. Mix that in with the critical thinking for this game, and you got one of the best Fire Emblem games ever.
Oh, chills. Literal chills.
It was number 5. Number 5 is my brother.
Oh my god, I forgot.
So happy we finally got a sequel to Super Mario Maker, and one that blows the first one out of the fucking water. Super Mario Maker 2 is endless amounts of fun when creating levels or playing other people's created levels. One major problem in the first Mario Maker was how many terrible courses there were in Course World. Mario 2 fixes that with an option to either like or dislike certain courses, making the terrible ones a lot less common to come across. It's also got many new elements when creating courses that were obviously missing from the first game, and adds 3D world to the games you can use, which kind of adds a new game in a new game. Too bad Nintendo waited very long to add new features to this game after launch. Otherwise, the game would be even longer.
7, 5. Number 4.
I was not expecting to have Luigi's Mansion 3 this high on the list, but here it is as the best Switch exclusive of the year. This blows the first 2 Luigi's Mansion games out of the water as well, as there was barely anything I didn't like when playing this game. Each level is another floor of a hotel, not a mansion, but regardless, they each have their own theme. One is like fantasy themed, there's a garden themed one, and my personal favorite being the movie set themed, as you literally fight God freaking Zilla in this game. Not to mention, Luigi is a nice and helpful mechanic without feeling too cheap. And when Luigi's scared, you really do feel the fear going through him, and that's just amazing. Simply put, if you have a Switch but not this game, what are you doing? One thing I've noticed is that we've been getting many revivals for franchises that have kind of been dead for the past few years. One of my favorite examples of that is Devil May Cry 5. Holy shit, Devil May Cry 5 is fantastic. The gameplay is simplistic, yet rewarding and challenging. The story is interesting, the way you get to play as 3 different characters, all of which have their own perspective of the story at some point, and that damn soundtrack, one of the best of the year. Plus a huge twist in the story, and you might have a game well worth 11 years in the making, and probably the best game in the series.
What kind of pencil do we take again?
Number 2. Take a number 2.
Looks like you took a big number 2.
Look, I know the meme is that any game even remotely challenging is Dark Souls, but they are not Sekiro. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is From Software's latest Souls-like game, may be their finest and may be their most challenging one yet. The combat here is unique as you actually have to think and predict your enemy's patterns, which is where some of the difficulty comes in. However, this is a game where the difficulty actually helps you improve as you pay careful attention to your enemies. Throw that in with how precise Sekiro requires you to be, because you're required to be very precise with many things in this game, and you have such a difficult yet rewarding title on your hands. Before we get to number 1, here are some honorable mentions. what's the common rule I have for most lists like this I do? No remakes. However, after playing the Resident Evil 2 remake, I realized how different a remake could be. You take more of a top-down survival horror game in the original Resident Evil 2 and turn it into a third-person survival horror game. We need more remakes like this. Resident Evil 2, the remakes, is story-wise the same as the original, but don't knock that as, I mean, it's a remake. The new third-person perspective, however, makes this game very different. Not to mention, you have two different characters you can play as, Leon and Claire, and they actually have their own playstyles, and it's like two different games. You also have a gun, a knife, a flash grenade, many different weapons, but you lose those at some point, and for example with the gun, when you run out of ammo, you could get more ammo, but you have to think on what to do without the gun. Not to mention the fear of any zombie popping up at any point, and you have a bona fide winner here in Resident Evil 2, and that's why it's the #1 best game of 2019. So that was my list. What did you guys think? Do you agree with it? I know I might be missing quite a few games that you guys really liked. Like, I know the controversial one, Death Stranding, was not even an honorable mention, and neither was Control, which was also pretty controversial, just because of how no one really knew about it, and then it became big with the Game Awards. I don't know. Just send me your list in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which I will be counting down the top 10 best games of the decade. Bye, guys.